The night of the coronation was the coldest the Blackthorn pack had seen in years, but no one felt it more than Alira Voss. She stood at the edge of the great hall, wrapped in a plain gray shawl, watching torchlight dance across the stone walls, as hundreds of wolves gathered to witness the crowning of their new alpha. She had not come to celebrate. She had come because something inside her chest had been pulling her toward this place for weeks, a quiet ache she could not explain, until the moment Cain Blackthorn stepped onto the dais and their eyes met across the crowded room. The pull hit her like a wave. Her wolf rose inside her, howling with a joy she had never known, and she understood, in that single breath, what had happened. He was her mate. The bond snapped into place so suddenly that she nearly stumbled, her hand flying to her chest, as if she could hold her own heart together. Cain felt it too. She saw it in the way his shoulders stiffened, the way his golden eyes widened before narrowing again, the way his jaw locked tight. For one heartbeat, something soft passed over his face, something that looked almost like wonder. Then it vanished, replaced by the cold, careful mask of a man who had spent his whole life being told that weakness could not wear a crown. The elders had already chosen his path. Beside him stood Seraphine, radiant in silver silk, her dark hair falling in perfect waves, her smile practiced and beautiful. She was the daughter of a powerful bloodline, the woman the council had selected to stand as Luna beside their new king. Cain looked at Alira one more time, and in front of the entire pack, he spoke the words that would break her. "She is not my mate," he said, his voice steady, even as his wolf howled in protest somewhere deep inside him. "I choose Seraphine as my Luna." The hall fell silent. Alira felt the rejection sink into her skin like claws, a mark that would never fully fade, a wound that every wolf in the room could sense. Whispers rose around her, some full of pity, others full of scorn. She did not wait to hear more. She turned and walked out into the freezing night, her wolf whimpering with a grief too large for her body to hold, and she did not look back. She left Blackthorn territory before sunrise, taking nothing but the shawl on her shoulders and the secret she did not yet know she carried. For 3 days she walked without direction, surviving on berries and stream water, sleeping in hollowed trees, her body growing weaker with every mile. She told herself she simply needed distance. She did not yet understand that she was also protecting a life that had already begun inside her. On the 4th day, she collapsed at the edge of Ashwood territory, her legs finally giving out beneath her. She woke to warmth. A fire crackled nearby, and a heavy fur blanket had been laid over her. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in a modest wooden cabin, sunlight slipping through the windows, and a tall man with calm brown eyes sitting across from her, watching with quiet concern. "You collapsed near my border," he said gently. "I am Draven Ashwood. You are safe here." Alira knew the name. Every wolf in the region knew of King Draven, the Alpha of Ashwood, known for his fairness and his steady, unshaken temperament. She tried to sit up, but exhaustion pulled her back down, and Draven simply placed another log on the fire, as if her presence in his home was the most natural thing in the world. "Rest," he said. "You can explain when you are ready, or you never have to explain at all." Those words stayed with her long after that first night. In the weeks that followed, Draven never once asked about the mark of rejection she carried, though he must have sensed it, and he never asked about the child growing inside her, though he must have guessed. He simply gave her a place to heal. He taught her the trails around his land, sat with her during quiet meals, and slowly, without either of them naming it, a friendship formed that neither expected but both needed. Alira gave birth to twins as the first snow fell that winter. She named them Ro and Ren, a boy and a girl with her soft brown hair, and, unmistakably, Cain's sharp golden eyes. Draven stood outside the door during her labor, pacing, and when he finally saw the newborns, something shifted in his chest that he did not yet have words for. He did not see another man's children. He saw 2 small lives that needed protecting, and he had already decided, quietly, that he would protect them with everything he had. Years passed. Ro and Ren grew up running through Ashwood's forests, laughing under Draven's watchful eye, calling him nothing but father from the moment they could speak. Alira never corrected them. She had tried, once, gently explaining that Draven was not their father by blood, and both children had looked at her with such confusion that she never brought it up again. To them, fatherhood had nothing to do with blood. It had to do with who taught them to hunt, who bandaged their scraped knees, who sat beside their beds during thunderstorms. The day the twins turned 12, they experienced their first shift, a milestone every young wolf both feared and anticipated. Elira stood nearby, tense with worry, but Draven knelt in the grass at their level, speaking softly, guiding them through the transformation, with the patience of a man who had done this 100 times in his mind, even though he never had. When their wolves finally emerged, small and trembling, both cubs turned immediately toward Draven, tails low, eyes wide with instinctive trust, and pressed themselves against his legs. Their wolves recognized him not as a stranger, but as their alpha, as their father. Elira watched the scene with tears in her eyes, tears that were not sad, but full of a peace she had not expected to feel again. Meanwhile, in Blackthorn territory, Cain Blackthorn ruled a pack that admired his strength, but whispered about his silence. Seraphine sat beside him as Luna, beautiful and composed in public, but behind closed doors, her smile faded into something sharper. Years had passed without an heir, and the council had grown restless, murmuring about succession, about bloodlines, about a king who seemed to grow colder with each passing season. What no one knew, except Seraphine herself, was that she could not bear children. She had known this long before her wedding, and she had hidden it carefully, terrified that the truth would cost her everything she had worked to gain. She grew desperate as the years wore on, watching Cain's eyes grow distant, watching him spend long nights alone at the edge of the territory, staring toward the horizon as though searching for something he could not name. He never spoke of Elira, but his wolf remembered her, and no amount of will could silence that memory. Some nights he woke from dreams of golden firelight and a woman's soft laughter, dreams he could never quite hold on to, and he would rise and walk the grounds until dawn, wondering why the crown he had wanted so badly felt so unbearably heavy. Seraphine noticed his distance and feared it. She began making choices out of desperation rather than reason, choices she told herself were necessary to protect her position. She sent trusted men to quietly search for any trace of the woman Cain had once rejected, telling herself it was simply information, simply caution. She did not yet know what she would do with what she found. She only knew that a king's forgotten mate, if she still lived, would always be a threat to a Luna who could give him nothing else. The chance meeting between the two packs came the following spring, when a trade summit was called between Blackthorn and Ashwood to settle a dispute over shared hunting land. Cain arrived with his council, expecting a routine negotiation. Instead, as he stepped into the meeting hall, his entire body went still. Elira stood near the far wall, dressed simply, her presence calm and composed in a way that startled him. Beside her stood two children, a boy and a girl, perhaps 12 years old, both watching the newcomers with quiet curiosity. Cain's gaze moved from Elira's face to the children's, and something cold gripped his chest as he took in their features. The boy's eyes were his own shade of gold. The girl had his exact posture, the tilt of her chin identical to a habit he had carried since childhood. He understood in an instant. These were his children. Before he could speak, both twins turned instinctively, not toward him, but toward Draven, who had just entered the hall behind them. "Father," the girl said, reaching for Draven's hand without hesitation. The boy simply moved closer to Draven's side, relaxed and unbothered, the way a child stands beside someone they trust completely. The word landed on Cain like a physical blow. He looked at Draven, who met his gaze steadily, without hostility, but without apology either. "They are mine in every way that matters," Draven said quietly. "I did not take that from you. You gave it away." Cain opened his mouth, then closed it again, no words strong enough to answer that truth. Elira stepped forward, calm despite the storm clearly moving behind her eyes. "You made your choice years ago, Cain," she said. "I do not need you to acknowledge them. They have a father. They have always had one." The summit that day never truly resumed as planned. Word of the encounter spread quickly, carried by whispers among the visiting wolves, and within days, it reached Blackthorn territory. Seraphine, already unraveling from years of hidden fear, learned the truth before Cain returned home. She learned that Alira lived, that she had borne twins, and panic overtook whatever reason she had left. She made a desperate decision. She sent men, not to observe, but to eliminate the threat entirely, believing that if the twins and their mother disappeared, her secret would remain safely buried, and her position secure. The attack came at dusk, 3 days later, as Alira walked home from the healer's lodge with Ro and Ren at her side. Rogue wolves emerged from the tree line, moving with clear intent, and for a terrifying moment, Alira feared she would not be able to protect her children alone. But Draven had never been far. He arrived within seconds, his wolf already shifting, placing himself between his family and the danger without a moment's hesitation. Ashwood warriors followed close behind, and the attackers, outnumbered and outmatched, were subdued before real harm could be done. When the dust settled, one of the captured rogues, frightened and desperate to save himself, revealed the truth. He spoke Seraphine's name, described her orders clearly, and admitted the entire plot had been born from her fear of exposure. The news reached Cain within hours, delivered by his own council, who had grown suspicious of Seraphine's behavior for months. He rode to Ashwood territory himself, arriving just as dawn broke, finding Alira and the twins safe, protected, and surrounded by wolves who had chosen to stand for them without hesitation. Cain stood before Alira in the pale morning light, stripped of the pride that had once defined him. "I was wrong," he said simply, "about all of it. I let fear decide for me, and I lost the only thing that ever mattered." Alira studied him for a long moment. She felt no anger anymore, only a quiet, settled clarity. "I forgive you," she said. "But forgiveness does not mean returning to what was broken." Cain nodded slowly, understanding settling over him with painful finality. He looked at Ro and Ren, who watched him with polite curiosity but no longing, no need for a father they had never known. He realized, standing there, that some doors, once closed, could not simply be reopened by regret. He returned to Blackthorn alone. Seraphine's deception was fully exposed before the council within the month, and she was stripped of her title, her years of careful lies finally collapsing under the weight of truth. Cain ruled on, wiser and quieter, carrying the lesson of his own rejection for the rest of his years. A king who had once thrown away his fated mate for the promise of a crown, only to learn too late that no throne could replace what he had lost. In Ashwood, life continued exactly as it always had. Alira found peace in her work as a healer, respected and valued in her own right. Draven remained precisely what he had always chosen to be, not by blood, but by every single day of quiet devotion. Ro and Ren grew into strong, kind young wolves, secure in the knowledge that family was never about the name written into a bloodline, but about the people who showed up, morning after morning, choosing to stay. Some kings chase crowns their whole lives, believing power will fill every empty space inside them. Others learn, often far too late, that the truest kingdom a person can ever build is a home filled with people who choose to stay, and a love that never once needed a crown to make it real.